So thank you everyone for joining. The session today will be covering, I guess, what we're seeing in terms of trends in the global benefits technology space. A very exciting time to be in the industry. A lot of change. I guess certain factors have influenced that change, but that's what we're going to be bringing to life today. If you have any questions as we go through, please do feel free to add them to the Q&A session. There is the ability to ask a question direct into the Zoom feature, so please do as we go through. We may cover it as we go through, or we may kind of wait until the end and kind of cover them all at once, but please do ask anything that you would like to as we go through.
Good morning. I think for those of you that have joined since I originally said that, my name is Paul Andrews. I'm the Global Benefits Director here at Benefex. Been at Benefex just over 2 years now, and my role is to run these webinars. If you've seen one of these and been on them before, you'll be familiar with my name and voice. I look at how we can use our technology with the benefits that you have overseas. So my background is international benefits. I've always done that. I spent, I think it was nine years at Mercer working with companies on their global benefits strategy. So I bring that to Benefex, and we then mirror how that works across our technology.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. And my name's Luke Palman. I'm a Global Account Director at Benefex. So I've been at the organisation over 10 years, I guess responsible for aspects of our global go-to-market strategy and engaging with organisations when they're in this sort of early stage thoughts around, okay, we have potentially a need to take our benefit strategy from a technology standpoint globally. How do we approach that? What's the right way for us to do that? And that's kind of my expertise in helping organizations as part of that journey. Now, to kick things off, I guess it mentioned it that there's quite a lot of flux, I suppose, in the industry at the minute. It's an ever-changing place. But Paul, to kind of kick things off, it'd be great to understand what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in conversations with customers and potential customers in this area?
There's been an incredible amount of change over the last 12 months, as you'd expect, and I don't think that's going to settle for some time. But I think what we are seeing now is companies start to think about a period of growth post-COVID, and some of these challenges are ones that you'll all be familiar with, and we tend to hear these on a frequent basis. So when I'm sat with customers and we're starting to think about global benefit strategy and how that can align with the technology platform that's on offer, these are the things that we hear more regularly. And I think we're in a recent forum, it'll be no surprise that things like administration and how the high levels of administration are almost stifling the HR comp and bens team, and they've been really put under huge amounts of pressure recently because they've continued to do the day jobs of looking after benefits, but also they've or you, I guess, have had to face a more hybrid workforce. So you have people up until recently more likely working from home, working from their garden shed, and now we're starting to see a return to work, but not everywhere. And I think trying to work with that, and of course the challenge of onboarding has meant that it's been a huge amount of work. And I think trying to run that, communicate with them, looking at the benefits as well. Are they now fit for purpose? That is a question I'm asked on a very regular basis. Are they what we would call the bricks and mortar benefits? Are they now fit for purpose? The gym membership for the building that's opposite the office, where you have an empty office or a half empty office, what value does that now bring? And so we're not going to go through all of these, but it's just to kind of flag to you, these are the things that we hear from our customers, and we're going to talk about how we can alleviate some of those challenges today, and some of the ways that we can, I guess, move forward and work in a world that's gone through a huge amount of change recently.
No, thank you, Paul. And I think whilst those are some of the challenges, actually a number of them they're not new challenges. Okay, I think you'd probably agree with me. Some of the organisations we speak with are having the same challenges now around this that they were 12, 24 months ago. So I guess where does technology come into this, and why now? What has changed that now means we're seeing this on a more common basis? Organisations looking to take the technology on a bit of a global journey to kind of support their benefit strategy. And I think there's a number of factors that come to mind. First of all would be data. I think everyone on this call is probably using or plans to use one of these three organizations. I think Workday are probably the most progressive and have perhaps the largest kind of penetration of global organizations that they're working with. And I think that's been one of the key things that I've certainly seen change in my time at Benefex is availability of data is now better than it's ever been before. Organizations have been on a bit of a journey to implement these types of systems. And what this now means is it's very simple to then take your employee data and route that into a third-party benefit system. You only have to undertake that as one exercise to cover all of your employees. Whereas perhaps a few years ago, it was seen as, okay, we need to do this, but it means we have to establish a data interface in every single country that we're in because we have different systems. So I think there's been a big shift with organizations going down a global route for their HR data. Absolutely lends itself to kind of remove some of the complexity that had been seen before to prevent organizations undertaking a benefit system globally.
I think so. I think that, that technology piece is very important. I think while we're talking about technology, actually having other systems in place really do help. And I think, when we started talking about some of those challenges, and I think we said that they all existed before, but some of them have been, I guess, more exacerbated over the last 12 months as we've all tried to find our way through with new benefits that need to be offered, and trying to communicate with that very disparate and different workforce to what we had before. And I think, when we start to talk about technology, one of the things that we see and we find very, very commonly when we start talking to customers is that you can't have this one system fits all, and that's become more and more apparent. And I think being able to be flexible, you may have that Workday platform in place across all locations, but then when it comes to things like benefits and you start to look at what you have in place across many different countries, it varies hugely. And we have this, what we call the simple to complex, and some of you may be familiar with this if you've heard us talk about this before. Quite easy to understand. It's very much on the simple end. You have very, very simple benefits structures. So it might be a location typically like the Nordics or parts of, I guess, Asia and Latin America, where you don't have a huge amount of benefits. If you do, some of them could be mandatory, they could be state systems, and you don't need a very complicated platform or technology solution to run those benefits for you. Your challenge there may be something completely different. It may be about communication and actually engaging with those employees so they do know where to go when they have queries and questions. They do know what they have. But it also may be more around highlighting what is available. It may be you have that one benefit that would be of absolute use to everyone. It could be a wellness benefit, for example. We've seen a huge growth in wellness allowances and wellness benefits over the past 12 months in various shapes and sizes across the globe. It may be that you want to communicate that, and so simple works for you in that sense. As you move through, you then, I guess, at the other end of the scale, have the complex system, which will be, I guess, the UK, the US, one or two other locations like Singapore as well, where you have huge choice amongst your benefits that's offered. There may be things in there for employees to pick, choose, upgrade. So typically it could be pension contributions, the ability to pick and choose how much you're going to contribute to your pension, your 401k in the US, superannuation in Australia. Or it could just be adding dependents to a healthcare plan that may be at the employee's own cost. And I think what we're trying to achieve and what we're seeing here is choice, because whilst the world has changed, what employees need now is that choice, and that's what companies are looking to offer to them. So by choice, I mean making sure something's relevant to them. I started by talking about the bricks and mortar gym membership for the building around the corner. Well, that's not going to work anymore for a hybrid workforce where you have 40-50% of people at home, 40-50% working in the office, and then any number of that 40-50 working in between the two. So that wellness gym membership benefit is no longer really relevant. It has to be more with a choice for that employee, something that works for them. Is it an online gym class? Is it sports equipment so they can go running, walking at the local club because they're spending huge amount more time at home? Or it could be something completely in between. And I think that's where we're seeing choice come in. And you may find that your countries are anywhere in between simple and complex. It may be that simple is something that works for you to begin with, more about communication. But what we want to say is that it doesn't always have to be complex either. And in fact, most of the locations around the world aren't actually that complex. There's only 4 or 5. And typically, you may have started by going live with a rollout in the UK. And that's probably one of the most, if not the most complex of all the countries that we see. So actually, you've done the hard work already by doing the UK, and you're probably going to see something that's not quite as complicated when you start to roll out and implement elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Paul. I think, technology has now caught up, so you can deliver through one system the right approach for benefits all around the world. You don't have to shoehorn a sort of a country into a complex, flexible benefit engine that doesn't really apply to that country. It's been a big shift, I think.
Absolutely. I think we've seen also where customers have gone down the route of saying, well, do you know what? Let's get something up and running in place that tells employees straight away what those benefits are that they have. It may be that, we're going to talk a little bit about growth as well. It may be that you're launching in a country and actually there you don't need an all singing, all dancing, and let's be honest, expensive system. You just need something that does the job of informing your employees and tells them where they need to go to get more information, and gives them that information at their fingertips. So you can start with a simple, start from that with a foundation, and then become more complicated. And we see that on a regular basis as well. So we've had customers that, and this links in typically with what we've just seen on the page there. We had one customer in India who said, we don't need anything complicated, we just need simple. We need something that tells employees where to go. We see a huge amount of queries coming out of this location. We've got high head counts. It's really demanding for our HR comp and bens team to deal with those queries. We just want them to know where to go for medical information, where to go to make a claim, what's covered, how to add dependents. And so we kicked off in, I think it was early 2020 now, which seems a lifetime ago now, BC, before COVID. And they kicked off, and their aim was to put something simple in place. And about 2 or 3 months in, as COVID started to interfere, I guess, with life in March, April last year, they suddenly realised that actually they needed something a little bit more beyond simple. So they came to us and said, can we change what we're doing? Of course we said, yeah, absolutely no problem at all. Give us an extra few weeks to get our head around what we need to do. And what they did, they in particular wanted to make sure that they were proofed for both COVID and the future. So we started to take what we had in place, which was very simple, and begin to add options for them. And one of the things we offered them as a solution was to add an actual COVID benefit. So they'd been in negotiation with their broker and with their healthcare provider in India to add an allowance for COVID. And that was to help their employees through the difficulties. So it allowed them to have I guess checkups. It allowed them to have testing. It allowed them to be treated for things, to spend on just looking after their wellbeing lives, to look after themselves at home. And so they converted a number of things to make their benefit more relevant to them. And that's exactly what we did. But it was also at their choice. So we built a benefit that was fit for purpose for that moment and for the future for them. And now they have this very complicated medical plan actually in India that is future-proofed and allows them to offer, I think it's 8 options in addition to the basic medical that they have, and they can add dependents as well, and they get credits towards that. So it's partly at their own cost, but it allows them to buy that medical plan that is relevant for them. And of course, India, of course, now sadly is somewhere that's been hit by COVID again, and this benefit and allowing them to have that will be really relevant to them. And the other change we've seen as well, and that flexibility and having that communication, that ability to communicate to employees, is how medical plans have changed and how employees have added things like virtual GPs. Nobody could see their GP just for minor ailments. So having that virtual GP option available was a change that we've all seen, and we won't go back. I don't think. Well, we're not going to go back. Virtual GPs are now here. Employees can use that for themselves, and it's that peace of mind. So that's another example that we've seen. And without a platform to be able to do that and to be able to communicate that, I think many companies would have struggled.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Paul. So, and I think if we go back to, I guess, kind of the overarching concept of the session today, what has changed, I think we can kind of break it down into those three key areas, right? It's the availability of data means it's easier to deploy a global benefit system than ever before. The technology has now caught up, so you don't have to do everything at once, and you can do what was, before perceived as quite complex. You can do it in a much more simple way to begin with. And then the big thing is sort of COVID, and a focus on well-being has absolutely fast forwarded lots of organizations' plans around these. I think when we factor those things into place, I guess there's one kind of key thing that does, and actually it dramatically means that the return on investment our customers are seeing is realized much quicker. But when we think about return on investment, where almost in kind of in pounds, pence, dollars, euros, francs, whereabouts are we kind of seeing that demonstrable return on investment, Paul?
Return on investment is a great one, and we could spend another hour talking. Definitely could spend an hour talking about return, because I think when we start speaking to customers, and both you are and I are customer facing, you've probably had it more times than the proverbial hot dinners. We're always asked, what's our return on investment in putting in a platform? And we've done a lot of work in this, and we would definitely recommend sitting down with us at some point and going through a workshop on these kinds of figures. It is, I think it's a question that gets asked. You, as HR comp and bens professionals, you can see the benefits. We know what the benefits are of a platform, how useful it is, the engagement piece, allowing employees to have a better journey around their benefits. But what are the costs involved? And clearly, when we start talking and you start talking to your accounts teams, your FDs and CFOs, there's always that question, well, this is how much it's going to cost us, but what are we going to get in return? So we've run some workshops and we've run some figures, and I know some of you have been wanting to know what our stats, our facts and figures are, and we advertise that, and I don't want to disappoint. We don't want to be in trouble for advertising something we're not delivering. We've done a lot of work around this, and we've done some reviews with customers where we've rolled out globally, and it's made for some really interesting facts and figures. And I think you'll see me just flicking down to my notepad here. The administration, that's obviously one of the biggest savings, and I think when we're starting to think, why now? Well, how much time do you spend on administration? And actually, it's probably hard to really justify and understand what that figure is. How much time do you spend on administering your policies, your membership, your renewals? How much time do you spend on queries? And what can a platform do for you on that? And I think the facts and figures when we've been questioning our customers is that we've seen something like a 40 to 45% reduction on administration by platform. That's in membership. So that's how much time you spend at renewals with those spreadsheets, with those Word documents, sorting out things, sorting out membership queries, just at renewal, a 45% reduction. And what you might find is that actually increases massively where you've nothing in place. So a lot of customers that we speak to have what we call greenfield sites. They don't have a platform in place. They may be using Workday, for example, to take off some of those benefits burden. But usually there's nothing in place. There might be an intranet site. There might be nothing in the background. It may be just spreadsheets and sticky tape, harking back to my school days. And when we look at queries, the queries is the big one. I talked about our customer there in India, and they had a huge headcount. They had several thousand, these are like 2,500 employees. And one of the things they said to us was, we just see so many queries coming in from them about their medical plan, what's covered, and we have nothing. We give them a handbook, it gets lost, it doesn't get read, we're forever answering questions. And there is also that, again, peace of mind. We want to know if this is covered. And they were spending huge amounts of time. And when we developed their site, we spent a long time going through a very, very intensive and extensive FAQ session. And I think we had something like 60 FAQs. We thought 60 can't be frequently asked. They were 60 FAQs. And by doing that, it reduced their queries that were coming through to their HR and admin team. And they said, after they'd done this, 6 months in, they'd seen overnight something like a 65% reduction in queries coming to them. And you can just imagine 65% time. Now, the magic wand starts waving at that point. You think, wow, if we can reduce admin by 45%, queries, the 65% of the queries we saw coming in no longer come in. Brilliant. Does that mean we don't need the staff? Well, actually, no, it doesn't. It just means that you can be more productive with that, with your team. You can start to do those things that you need to do, those projects you need to do. I mean, of course, roll out a benefits platform elsewhere in the world will help you, but also things like review benefits, ensure your benefits are relevant. Is your wellness benefit relevant? Is it fit for purpose? Are you then doing surveys with your employees to make sure that they're engaged, that they're productive, that the benefits that you're offering are competitive? Are you also then able to do that onboarding of remote employees? Are you able to look after people as they move back into the office? Of course, if you've got all of this in place, you've got more time, you and your team, to concentrate on that and actually look after those employees and spend more time on those queries, those problems that you really can't at the moment. So that's kind of the first one. I think then productivity and employee time, that's the one that I wanted to highlight, and hopefully none of our bosses are on today, Luke. But I think it's fair to say, when you're doing your benefit selection and you want to know more about dental, you want to know how to make a claim, whether or not you're covered for something, you're tending to do it on your employer's time, because you're logged onto the system, you're all there, everything's there, and you do it there, and you tend to do it. We probably shouldn't admit to it, but we do. And the less time we as employees and your employees spend doing that, the more time they're actually doing work. We found that it's around 12 hours on average per year an employee spends navigating a benefits site, looking for benefits, handbooks, intranet sites. 12 hours choosing benefits. That's actually quite a bit of time. And if you've got a workforce of 1,000 people in just say one location alone, never mind elsewhere, spending 12 hours, that's beyond my maths, because it's too early in the morning to do those kinds of sums. But that's a huge amount of time that your company is losing in productivity because they're navigating that. We reckon we can save between half and 60% of that time on navigation, at least. Typically, of course, the first year somebody puts a platform in place, it takes a little bit longer to understand, and they want to know more about their benefits. But of course, that reduces over time. You can reduce that time spent by employees by 50–60% just navigating on their benefits and making selections. That's a huge amount of time that you're giving back to your company in terms of productivity. And we know now, we're talking about return on investment, because we know, and what we're seeing with our customers is that they want to grow. They're in a very hungry phase for growth, for increasing their sales, for increasing their capacity, and also increasing the number of offices, locations they have around the world. And I think, if you can free employees up to do more work in that sense, you can reduce their navigation time. You yourself and your team can then reduce the amount of time you're spending on managing these benefits. Then clearly that's going to have a positive impact on your company.
Yeah, great. I think for me, one that I see an awful lot actually to kind of pick out here would be point 5 around harmonization, particularly of harmonization of systems. So I was speaking literally last week with a customer of ours who've they've been a customer for over 4 years now, a global telecoms organization. And actually, prior to deploying our solution, they had multiple solutions across the world and actually had various solutions and systems even in one country, they could have 3 or 4 different systems. And actually, by bringing it all together in one system, both meant there was cost savings in terms of the license fee that they were paying to all these various providers, but also the amount of time that was saved through their processes of managing those providers and the vendor processes and the security and legal processes that governed all of those individual system providers that they had. It was just a huge saving for them, and actually it's something that can be quite easy to quantify. I think that's the key thing, right, Paul, that each of these 6 areas can be quite easy to quantify once you kind of sit down and crunch the numbers.
Yeah, they can actually, and we tend to be well less surprised now, but certainly customers are in what those figures can actually look like. And you can even input your own things like in absence rates and employee turnover, and we know it's going to be challenging. We know that pay rises and bonuses are going to be very limited, so making sure your employees know exactly what they have and what the benefits are in place, and that perhaps you have a really good pension scheme, making sure that they know about this before they start to consider jobs elsewhere, and that they're getting the support that they need. And you've got that EAP and the counselling support and the childcare allowances in different parts of the world. Knowing that will really help your benefits package, and you can have the best benefits package in the country, but if you're not communicating that to your employees, then they don't know it, and it has no value. So you're spending huge amounts of money, but it has no value if the employees don't know anything about it. And I think some of the facts and figures we've got here, more figures. I think we did one recently, 250. So it was a fairly small headcount in Europe. And we did the workshop piece on return investment on all of these and a few other factors, and it was coming in at about £308,000 a year of savings just for 250 employees in Europe. 308,000, and I think that represents quite an interesting figure. When we start to talk about US with higher salaries, higher benefit costs, you start to see for around about 300 employees, the figure I have here is £748,000 in 1 year, and that's year on year of savings in employee time, in queries, and so we're putting a figure on time as well there, and reducing turnover rates. Really compelling figures, to be honest, that make this seem kind of more important, and on why it's done, because you can't get that benefit. You can't get the benefit from a platform until it's up and running and in place.
Thanks, Paul. And I think the thing that I see a lot is, whilst these are the areas where we're really able to drive a demonstrable return, something that always comes up with organizations that we're speaking with is about that employee experience, and trying as best as possible, whilst also acknowledging the different country norms and legislation, but trying as much as possible to offer a unified experience for their employees.
Yeah, I was talking to someone last week, and they're responsible for their global workforce, and they were saying to me that they have offices in Australia, and they're all now pretty much back to work in the office. They've got people in Asia, India, UK, across Europe, and they were saying, I've now got this position where I have people everywhere in different positions, different situations, and what we want to do is look after them. That's the ultimate strategy, and we want to make sure that we're looking after their health, their well-being. We want to protect them, and how do we communicate to them? How do we look after them? And that takes a huge amount of time, and I think by having that strategy aligned with that technology, you can then get to everybody, no matter where they are, whether it's they're working from their ironing board in their kitchen, they're in their garden shed, or they're now back in the office in Australia, where the figures are very, very low. And I think this isn't going to change, and I think being able to do that now is key, and allows you then to just focus on those other things like growth.
Absolutely. I think there's some great examples that I've seen of actually what a unified experience is, and what a kind of consistent global employee experience is. I think a couple that spring to mind, I know an organisation you've been working very closely with, Paul, London Stock Exchange Group.
Indeed. Well, they're in the news quite a lot, aren't they, at the moment? They've been very, they're looking for growth. It's one of those examples where they're looking for growth. They've been acquisitive as well. And one of the things that they've done is look at their strategy, and they've gone through they've started with a very simple, let's communicate and reduce that admin queries approach to begin with, and now starting to look at a more complex solution for some of their locations. But what they've found is that they've had various acquisitions in different locations, and being able to I guess extend a platform and that branding and bring their electronic arms around everybody. Go, look, you're all part of the same group now, and this is what we're trying to achieve. We want to look after your physical health, your financial well-being, your families. These are the benefits that we offer. They differ from location to location, but ultimately our aims and our strategy is to make sure that you have good healthcare everywhere in the world, whether it's state, whether it's a mixture of state and private, or whether it's just private. That's our aim. Here it is. This is what it looks like. You are all kind of important to us, and by having that platform and that branding globally and aligning that, no matter where they are in the world, employees have that same experience. They feel part of the same company, and that's very, very important. It doesn't matter whether they were part of a smaller 20-person organization in Hong Kong, or whether there were 4,000 in the Philippines, or even 200 in South Africa. They're all part now of that same organization, and they feel it, and it's really helped them embed those qualities and the philosophy of the company. And it also allows companies, and one of the things that we've seen change as well on benefits, is that there is a move towards a more kind of community and social responsibility and sustainable benefits, whether that's through eco allowances and vouchers, whether it's through electronic e-cars, shall we say, or even just charity giving, planting trees, by offering that across the company and saying these are the things that we stand for as a company. It links into benefits, it links into engagement, and it links into that making sure your employees feel part of an organisation.
Absolutely. I think another great example, very similar actually in terms of the objectives, but Salesforce ranked the #1 place to work in the world on Glassdoor, and in lots of local countries as well. They're always coming at the top of the in-country lists, and I think it's no surprise, because they have a very coherent approach to the employee experience globally, very focused on well-being, and actually almost kind of 60-70% of their offering is consistent around the world. So they're using our platform to deliver information around stock, around charity, like you just mentioned, Paul, around a whole range of kind of health, well-being, access to certain doctors, maternity, paternity, even aspects of fertility, which are global initiatives that are being driven through the technology. And it just means, whether you're an employee-based, it doesn't matter where you are, essentially, you have access where possible to the same global policies. And I guess it just delivers that kind of consistent experience globally.
Definitely. And I think when it comes to the advice, I think we were chatting with one of our customers recently, and I think they were quite hesitant to begin with. They rolled out in the UK, and they said it was quite a task to roll out in the UK, and then they went to Ireland, and they were a little bit tired, and obviously it's a big workload. And they said they were hesitant to begin with. Well, we can see the benefits, but it's a huge project for us. And so the advice I gave them at the time, which is when we started doing this a couple of years ago, was bite things off bit by bit. You don't have to do 10, 20 countries all at once. And one of the customers there, you mentioned Salesforce, they're still rolling out, and I think we've done 20, 25, 26 locations with them now, and they're rolling out bit by bit. And that's my advice. Don't bite everything off and chew all at once. You simply can't. It's work out which countries are your priorities, and then start to roll out on that basis. And the other advice is that I think the customer I was just talking about, they turned on and eventually, having gone out in another 6 or 7 locations, said, how could we not afford to do this? The time is now, because we had to do it. We couldn't afford not to do it, because some of our competitors are doing it, but it's just freed up so much time. And in that sense, the wins that you can get, the big wins by picking off those countries. And if you just want to pop to the next, I think it's the next slide. If we go to the next one, that's it. Thanks, Luke. If you pick off some of these points that are important to you, the strategy piece, the complexity, the admin. If you pick these off and get some big wins, the first 1 or 2 countries, all of a sudden you actually see that your resourcing is improved, because you've got more time to start to run this out. And you start to see then huge amounts of engagement internally from employees, from your peers, and also from above, which is obviously very important to manage above in a company, when you start to see some of the success that comes through, and some of the stories, the employee surveys that we see as well, the employee survey results, how employees kind of see their benefits, understand their benefits better, and also feel like that their views are listened to as well, in the the new benefits or the changes that you're able to offer, because you can offer choice that you couldn't offer before with a platform. So this is just some more factors you can consider when prioritizing locations. As I say, just don't do them all at once.
I think it's a really useful slide, actually, Paul, because I think the other thing that my other advice would be remain flexible. So, no doubt whenever you work with an organization, you agree a contract and a scope and all these kind of things, but you want to make sure you have the ability to move other countries forward or back, depending on situations that change, that sometimes no one can have a view of. I think your example of that organization and the requirement for India, that came absolutely from nowhere, right? COVID has totally changed their priority. So it's all about working with a partner to be flexible. I've seen it with other projects where, for instance, I was working with one, and the project manager, who was based in New Zealand, all of a sudden was pregnant, and then was actually planning to go on maternity leave. So actually they moved their kind of region that they were responsible for forward, so that actually they could kind of work through and kind of finish their deployment in the Asia Pac region prior to that individual going off on maternity leave. Or we see it with organizations when they're partway through a rollout, and then they acquire an organization, and that either means there's more of a priority because there's more headcount, and there's more of a strategic priority to get that country live and supported. Or we've even seen it go the other way, that they acquire an organization and actually they're very well covered, or they already have a system in place, they already have the processes to manage that population, so it becomes less of a priority and perhaps goes at the end of that list. So I think that would be my other piece of advice, is for anyone who's considering rolling out, absolutely try and remain flexible. So get an idea of what your priority is and what will work for you, but be conscious that actually that could change as you go through, and you want to work with a partner that can enable that change and enable that flexibility.
Very, very conscious of time. Got a couple of questions, and I think they link into what we're doing here. So we'll very quickly answer these, and an extra one's just come in, and then we'll probably sign off. Would you recommend any regions or countries as priorities? Well, I think it depends on what your priorities are internally, and it may be that you are about to go into a location, or you've made an acquisition, and that becomes a strategic priority. We're speaking to a customer yesterday, and they had I think it's 2.5 or 2,200 employees in Poland, and they were finding the administration there was extremely heavy on the comp and bens and HR people, and whilst they had more complex benefits in I think it was the US and Spain, they just needed something to alleviate that workload in Poland. So I think we tend to sit down with you and work through what some of these are and what they look like for you, so we find what your priorities are. The question here about implementing benefits, and is it a good time to review? Absolutely, yes. And usually when you do this, we tend to find customers start on the journey of an implementation. They find out what's actually in place. They may have a few surprises, and it may be that it's a good chance to uplift what's there already, offer more choice, introduce a new benefit, none of which could be done without that platform. But also it may be just a good way of also understanding what's in place that shouldn't be in place, and being able to curtail that, shall we say, and making sure that that's communicated in the right way. Final one is, if it's on the simple side, is it still worth implementing a platform? Absolutely. I think Poland in particular has either 1 or 2 benefits that can offer choice to employees. That's healthcare and pension. Sometimes we have locations where it's just healthcare, or maybe none at all. It absolutely is, because the aims there may not be about the administration of the platform in terms of renewals. It may be more around communication, queries with employees, popping that information somewhere that they can see it. It may be around making sure that they understand what's in place. It may be strategic and making sure that they are, if they're, they're an acquisition or they're an office that hasn't had much love, I think is a word that I've heard being used a few times, making sure that they feel part of the company as well. So yeah, absolutely, it can be as, if not more important sometimes, to look after those with a simple benefit structure. I think that's pretty much the questions answered. Any final thoughts, Luke?
No, I think that's everything from my side. To be honest, I guess we've kind of covered off really the key points about why organisations are looking to do this, and there's never been a better time. I suppose I guess it would be the obligatory kind of slide that if anyone is kind of in the world of thinking actually we are quite interested, we think we might be a good fit, or aspirationally it's something that we would like to achieve. Paul, myself, would love to have a conversation with you, understand a bit about your strategic priorities, where you're looking to get to, and actually start to see, does the return on investment stack up for yourselves, and where would you see that return? And hopefully going to give you something that you can take internally alongside a potential rollout plan. So where are your countries on that sort of simple to complex scale, and what potentially could be the priority order and right for you? So that's something that we would, relish the opportunity to have a conversation with anyone who's potentially thinking about kind of rolling something out.
That's great. Yeah, whether it's one country or 10. Thank you everybody for your time. And apologies that we've run over a little bit, but hopefully that's been of interest and worth that little bit of a delay. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you all again at a future webinar. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Cheers.